Can a legend like Lewis Hamilton survive Ferrari's technical chaos? Was the Singapore Grand Prix the definitive breakdown point between the 7-time world champion and the Scuderia? From the first SF-25 test in Bahrain, the Achilles heel of Ferrari's new car was exposed with a disturbing clarity: the brake system. For a pilot like Lewis Hamilton, accustomed for 12 years to the surgical precision of the carbon industry system in Mercedes, the change to Brembo, the supplier that Ferrari uses by tradition and internal engineering, represented not only a technical adjustment, but a complete transition of driving philosophy. It was not simply stopping earlier or more softly, it was about releasing to drive. From the first free training of the Singapore Grand Prix, the symptoms were alarming: total inconsistency. A game of pills worked perfectly in the first batch, and in the second it was how to step on a vacuum without mordant or feedback. Hamilton described him as a lottery, and did not exaggerate. Each entrance to curve, each braking point became a mental uncertainty, a latent threat. What for other pilots is a mechanical act of muscle memory, for him it was a constant risk decision. Brembo pills have completely different thermal behavior. They require a very specific temperature window to deliver their maximum performance, and any minimum deviation that can be derived in fading, vibrations, or loss of braking power. And this is where SF-25 shows its real problem. Chassis is not designed to correctly manage that heat. The aerodynamics of the car does not allow sufficient ventilation in urban paths such as Singapore, where low speed and constant traffic hinder the flow of air to the brakes. This generates a progressive thermal accumulation that not only compromises the braking system, but also alters all the behavior of the car: balance, grip, and even tire wear. In long sessions such as a complete race, this situation becomes unsustainable. And for Hamilton, who has always demanded an immediate and firm sensation on the pedal, what he had was the opposite: a soft, intermittent, treacherous route. From cockpit, frustration grew back after return. I knew that I could not attack the pianos, which should leave extra meters in each braking to avoid the blockade. And that, in Singapore, means losing vital seconds. The technical distrust was leaked into its pilot style, transforming each curve into a fight with the car. Radios during training were eloquent. Hamilton did not ask for solutions, demanded answers. Because what was happening was not an occasional failure, it was a direct consequence of a poorly executed design. And the most serious, there were no signs that Ferrari could solve it soon. The lack of coherence between what the team promised and what the car delivered fed an increasingly difficult discomfort to hide, and what should have been a weekend of progress became a strategic and technical nightmare. From the garages to the track, the drama felt in the atmosphere, and Hamilton, for the first time since it arrived in Maranello, began to show external signals of disappointment. What happened on the Sunday of the Singapore Grand Prix was, without rodeos, a technical horror scene for any professional pilot, but especially for someone like Lewis Hamilton, who has built his career on the basis of mechanical trust, of the absolute domain on each element of his car. Since the training returned, the British noticed that something did not square. The brake pedal did not have the usual bite, and the car took longer to stop. However, trusting that it was a passing condition of the first laps, he decided to adapt. What I did not imagine is that this was just the prologue of a hell that would be displayed with brutal clarity in the last turns. As the race advanced, the SF-25 began to reveal its Achilles heel with a crudeness chilling. The brake system collapsed thermally back after return. And the most dangerous thing was not the waste of time in each sector, but the unpredictability of the system. In a braking I could behave acceptably, and in the following simply not responding. There was no reliable pattern. This forced Hamilton to change his pilot style on the march, altering his usual layout, releasing the brake early, excessively modulating the pedal, everything to avoid blocking wheels or losing the rear of the car in the middle of the curve. At the technical level, the telemetry sensors of the car began to report alarming data. The temperatures of the discs reached figures that, under normal conditions, would force a team to remove the car for fire risk or structural failure. And yet, Hamilton decided to continue. The equipment of the equipment, the public image, and the need to add points weighed more than the logic. Under conditions, each braking is not just a maneuver, it is a high-risk bet. It is enough a tenth of unanswered on the pedal to crash against the wall in Marina Bay. And that was exactly what Hamilton lived for more than 10 laps. A pilot with 7 titles of the world, fighting not against his rivals, but against the tool that was supposed to serve him. In the final bars of the race, the punishment was absolute. In the last lap, Hamilton lost more than 45 seconds compared to his reference return. In any other situation, that would have meant abandonment. But with pure tenacity and almost without brakes, he managed to keep the car on the track, barely crossing the finish line in front of Fernando Alonso, who cut him more than 30 seconds only in that last turn. The impressive thing was not to end 7th. The truly shocking thing was to end. During those last laps, Hamilton had to manage not only brake overheating, but the tangible fear of not being able to stop in the most closed curves of the circuit. Each touch to the pedal was an unknown. Each asphalt meter became a threat. From the walls, the engineers tried to guide it with messages about the braking distribution, on possible mapping changes to slightly cool the system. But at that point, the situation was insurmountable. The air flow on the ducts was insufficient, and the accumulated heat had already damaged the internal parts of the system. Even subsequent cooling, designed for high-demand circuits, was not surrendering how it had been foreseen in simulations. The aerodynamic configuration of the SF-25, which sacrifices later load to gain in-line efficiency, played against thermal management, leaving Hamilton with a car that was not only slow, but treacherous. The most dramatic thing is that Ferrari had already seen this problem during wind tunnel simulations and bank tests, but decided to trust that it would not be a critical factor until later in the season. That decision, that little act of technical faith, ended up costing his star pilot expensive on one of the most demanding clues of the calendar. And the worst, he publicly presented the vulnerability of the car and the lack of team forecast. Because when the system fails under pressure, not only the car is broken, trust is broken. And in a sport where that trust is everything, the damage is already done. When the Saturday classification ended in Singapore, Lewis Hamilton was expected to get out of the car, exchange some words measured with the media, and focus on the race. But what happened was the opposite. What he said to the cameras, without filters or euphemisms, fell like a missile over Ferrari's heart. Without raising the voice, but with a forcefulness that left no room for misunderstandings, the 7-time world champion launched a direct comparison that cut his new team as a scalpel. In Mercedes, they would never have made such a basic mistake. The phrase, dry, loaded with technical contempt, not only criticized a specific decision. It represented a devastating verdict on Ferrari's general operation. Hamilton did not speak like a pilot frustrated by a bad Saturday. He spoke like someone who could no longer ignore the obvious. He was in an environment that, at least at that time, was not up to his standards. The trigger for his comment was what happened in Q3. In the final minutes, Ferrari made an elementary calculation error. They took Hamilton from box for their last attempt too late. And not only that, they left him waiting with the car off at the end of the Pittsburgh lane, while the stopwatch ran and the temperatures of his tires collapsed. On a track like Singapore, where every 10th account, that error is unacceptable. But when it comes to classification tires, thermal management is critical. Every second out of the optimal temperature means loss of adhesion, traction, trust. And Hamilton felt it in each curve. His final return was a desperate attempt to rescue the unrecoverable, and when he got out of the car, he made it clear that failure was not a product of chance, but of a disorderly operational structure. The most revealing of his statement was the use of the past. He did not say, "Here we failed," but "In Mercedes this did not happen." That comparison was not free. It was intentional. A direct message not only to the technical team, but to the hierarchical managers of Ferrari. Some analysts began to wonder if this relationship has a future. But the problem is not only political, it is technical. Because while names and responsibilities are discussed, the SF-25 still has a structural defect in its braking system. The next evolution of the car, scheduled for the great prizes in the United States and Mexico, includes a partial redesign of cooling ducts, but it is not a radical solution. Leave me your opinion in the comments you thought. Subscribe if you have not already done it.